OK, waiting for the slides, let me clarify one point. We will talk about sustainability again in data center. This is probably the 5th or 6th presentation about sustainability.
This is crazy.
But if you're here to get answers, this is not the right presentation. Actually, this is to spark a conversation that then we will have a panel discussions hosted by the OCP online. And actually, this presentation is to explain why we think it's needed and what we would like to discuss in these panels. So again, no answers here. But a lot of questions. And the reason why we think that it's another conversation about sustainability is needed is because we have a little of a different approach. We talk mainly about cooling and power and what it entails when we talk about sustainability.
There it is.
So that's the end. Questions? OK. OK, here we are.
Working this to that.
OK, no problem. So again, the reason why we think that another conversation is needed about sustainability is because the data centers are certainly seen more and more as resource drain. We talk about power, we talk about water, of course, real estate. And certainly the presence of the data center is not dwindling. On the opposite, we will have more and more data centers. And if we talk about the environment, certainly they are seen as a liability more than an asset. Now, we have an opportunity to actually turn that around if we work together. And when I say we work together, this is actually a key point. We think that is the time, this is a perfect time to have a paradigm shift and stop thinking about data centers and companies like, this is my company, and this is my data centers, and I do whatever I think it's best for my company and my data center. But start to thinking about an ecosystem where the data center is connected to everything that it's around the data center. Specifically, if I want to implement heat reuse, for instance, but my data center is in the middle of the desert, and the next building is 5 miles down the road, I can have the best intentions, and I can have the best technology, but there's nothing I can do. On the other hand, if I move the data center in an urban or industrial environment where I can have all these connections, then there could be some power constraints, there could be some water constraints, there could be some real estate constraints. So a conversation is really needed where you bring to the table all the actors, my company, in this case actually his company, because we don't do data centers, but they do. So the companies, end users, cities, industrial districts, utilities. This is what we really think that a paradigm shift is needed. And why we are here, why the two of us are here. So I work for a company that does heat transfer, and it's a Northern European company from Sweden. It's has always been very environmentally oriented, even when it was not actually really a thing. So has always been very, the production method has always been very carefully designed to be as less impactful on the environment as possible. But we are manufacturers, so we do things, and therefore the carbon footprint of our production is hard because, of course, we have to include the value chain of our production, which is much harder. I mean, nothing is easy, but this is a little harder. And these are the goals that we have. On the left, this is Alfa Laval is the company, and which are, of course, a little different from a tech company like Meta that has a much more detailed environmental, let's say, program because it's much more visible, right?
Yes. So I'll talk about Meta's sustainability priorities first. I'm still trying to get used to the new name, so pardon me if I go back. But amongst the key priorities that we have as a company for sustainability, I'm listing the top 3 here that apply really well to the power and cooling space and should be explored further in terms of sustainability in that equipment segment within data centers. First is push efficiency first. By that, what we mean is just designing for water and power and other long-term efficiency opportunities that we have when we do the design very, very, very upfront. Second is impact outside the data center. Here what we mean is how can we be a good neighbor and minimize the impact to air, water, environment, and the physical characteristics of the region in which we exist. And then lastly, eliminating waste is mainly around propagating a zero waste culture by using less and or recycling and reusing more at the fag end of the useful life of the equipment. So I wanted to expand a little bit more over here in terms of the 3 priorities that Meta has that apply to this space and what are the key opportunities that exist within those priorities specifically, and what these are some of the areas we've started to really explore. As you can imagine, power and cooling space, sustainability in that area is a very, very new space as compared to the rack. The equipment life cycle is much more longer than what you see on the rack and server space. So it's very new. But what are the things that we are doing, right? So within pushing efficiency, the PUE and WUE numbers, these metrics are very well known. These are obviously some of the very industry leading numbers. But there's continuous progress that we're trying to make here. Water is coming into a large focus because unlike renewable energy where power has an option to be more sustainable, water is a lot more challenging. Even recycling water increases the TDS in the air, and there's potential impact to breathing that we have to really consider when we're looking at water recyclability and sustainability. Sustainable materials in our design, we're looking at what material, all the way from construction, steel and concrete, to more advanced materials that are used in equipment, what kind of a footprint that each of these have, and how can we optimize the use of more sustainable materials in our design with our suppliers. Extending the useful life or optimizing it. Like I mentioned, the equipment have, in this space, right, it's a long life equipment. We're only starting to see, we're an 11-year-old company as far as data centers is concerned. We're starting to see the first equipments reach end of life. And we've started to think about this problem because every time we go and replace equipment that creates extra work, how can we reduce the mismatch that exists within a data center of all the way from 10 years to 40 years that we have for equipment, and how can we extend some of these lower life to equipment to be replaced in a more sustainable cycle and reduce the impact. In terms of outside the data center and being a good neighbor, identifying opportunities where we can reuse energy, right? Heat recapture is an area where we've done a lot of stuff to preheat. Examples are we preheat and pre-treat cold water in winter environments. We have a very good partnership in Odense data center in Denmark, where the heat recapture is being given to the local municipality to transfer this heating to residential neighborhoods. Working with suppliers on greenhouse gas emission reductions. This is a space that is very well explored in a lot of other industries. We've done some work here on the rack space, but exploring this, especially with tier 1 manufacturers who produce large equipment, is fairly new, but there's a lot of opportunity here to go into the tier 1 and tier 2 supply chains. And then renewable energy, we have a commitment. We've already been powering our data centers with 100% renewable energy. And we have a net zero commitment by the end of 2030, which is something we are working and executing towards. And data centers form a key part of that. In terms of eliminating waste, this goes back again to design. How can we reduce less components? We are, obviously data center design requires a lot of redundancy. We're really rethinking the redundancy and as well as the modularity of design to see how we can reduce less. How can we design for circularity at the end of life? And then going down to our suppliers, really looking at what can be done in terms of circular supply chain models in tier 1 and tier 2. And when we really talk about end of life, how do we recycle stuff? We started exploring what equipment in this real gamut of 10 to 40 useful life is reusable, recyclable. How can we go and impact our upfront design to make it even more recyclable? We're working with some tier 1 companies who play in this space. It's exploratory, but it's an area to really explore. And then the landfill diversion target applies. We have not been sending too much of power and cooling to landfills or recycling for that matter, but we have a 75% diversion rate target that we could apply to power and cooling equipment as well. That's it. I'll turn over to you.
Yeah, so we really thought that we believe that the comprehensive conversation is needed. If you ask 10 people what's the definition of sustainability, most likely you have 12 definitions. And we don't have a metric to actually measure sustainability that includes all the different facets. And it's not going to be easy to actually to find that metric. But as the creation of PUE really sparked an attention of efficiency, because as soon as you have something that you can see and you can measure, then you start paying attention to the thing. We really believe that a metric to measure sustainability that is easy and intuitive would be the starting point of this conversation. So we really would like to put together a panel in 2022, in the first quarter of 2022, gathering the people interested and discuss what this metric should entail. First step. The second step is the coordination.
Yeah, I think as we explore more and more of these sustainable strategies, it'll be really interesting to see. We're always looking at what the financial and operational trade-off is of driving an efficient data center, which is redundant and reliable at the same time. As we introduce more sustainability, what trade-offs and decisions are we looking at? And that will be a great topic to explore.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, we were talking about when tech companies decided to switch to renewable energy, they didn't do it because it was less expensive, but because it was the right thing to do, and, I mean, incidentally, looked good for the companies as well. So this kind of coordination of activities can actually benefit the company as a whole, again, if it's coordinated. If it's a number of individual activities we can lose a chance. And there was a ton of presentations here, for instance, about heat reuse. What can we do with the heat reuse? Which is a little of a challenge, because it's not easy to find what we call a heat host. So even if you're able to capture that heat and then transfer the heat somewhere, find a heat host that actually receives that heat consistently is not easy, because the first example that comes to mind, of course, is district heating, but that's seasonal. So what do you do in summer? You need to hold the backup cooling system that when the district heating doesn't receive your heat. So coordination is really, really needed to find the best solution to turn the data center from a liability for the environment into an asset. Because if you use renewable energy, so you have zero impact in the energy that you use, and then you reuse your heat for any other activity, you become carbon positive, which is what everyone here wants to do. And finally, the third point, of course, as we said at the beginning, is integration. If companies keep thinking, this is my data center, this is my business, and I'll do the best as I can, but in the confine of my company, I don't think that we will lose a chance here. So we really need to put together all the actors and coordinate the activities in a way that makes sense. I sound like a broken record, but we really believe in this. So again, this is just to launch this initiative. And as I said, no answers. But we really hope to work with you to find the answers. Questions? Again, we don't have answers, so you can ask the questions. But
yeah, I think we're open to take a few questions. We have some time. Like Cosimo mentioned, it's a very new topic. So we're really looking for ideas and to learn and grow together in the space, but open to hear any thoughts and questions that you may have.
Question. I noticed reducing demand from users isn't on the chart, telling people to refresh less often or something like that. Is that something that would make it more sustainable?
You mean changing the behavior of the users?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to speak for that. Obviously, we are, in general, in the last 2 to 3 years, I've been at Meta, the load has only increased, right? We used to be more text, then we went to photos, now we're in video and live, and then there's the metaverse. So we're definitely looking at more load per user. I think within technology, there are definitely initiatives where we can optimize and reduce the load that comes from the same users for the same applications. I don't think, again, I'm not qualified, I can get back to you, but I'm not sure if there's an initiative to really push users to use less of the application and the features, but there's definitely applications and technology ideas that we're working on that will reduce the load internally for the same user action.
Okay. Maybe as Cosmo said about metrics, if you have a metric and show them their CO2 usage, that might induce them to change their behavior.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I strongly believe that everything that is visual and shows your impact, whether it's the impact of the data center. Again, I really have the example of the PUE. I remember when the PUE was established, this company started to put action monitors measuring the PUEs of their data centers. And that was a great incentive for them to be more efficient. Because you could see there, I'm wasting a lot of energy here. And at that time, energy was the main focus. And then when all the companies started to actually say, OK, I use 100% of my energy, it's either renewable or I offset their energy. But now that is switching, it's not only energy. You have energy, and then you have water, and then you have, I don't know if you have heard about the 3P and the 3 bottom lines, which is profit, planet, and people. So companies are really progressively getting more and more conscious that you need to take into account all the facets of your activity, and not only one of them because it looks good.
Yeah, I think where I sit in the organization, we're really, countering that with technology. Like servers obviously need to be much more faster. They're obviously producing more heat, but at the same time, using liquid to the chip, right? That is a methodology where we can actually be a lot more efficient in how we reduce the heat, how we reuse that heat. These are the ways we're challenging more density that the user experience is bringing to within the data centers. Just want to point that out, yeah.
And liquid cooling, it is certainly one of the things that could improve that could actually easy the impact of the environment. But there's a lot of resistance as well about implementing on a large scale liquid cooling because it's new, it's innovative, it's risky, and no one likes risk. So we need someone that actually takes the lead and really drives it home for all of us.
Hi, just wanted to give a time check.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
And also invite both of you to join our circularity and sustainability work streams that are already going on with OCP sustainability. Much of the good reminders you gave us are very much the key components we've talked about throughout the day. So I guess one clarifying question I could ask for you to have some ending thoughts is, are you proposing a new work stream on data center powers or cooling, or are you proposing that we collectively pay attention to it, which is being done?
I certainly missed something. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm aware of everything that is going on. But it seems to me that the conversations that are existing right now are a little in silos. For instance, I don't see any public representative of like cities or towns in these conversations, but they need to be there. And utility companies, they need to be there. Because, for instance, if we use the heat, and I'm looking at the time, so if we use the heat, for instance, there's been a very few presentations, very interesting presentation about use the heat to generate fresh water through desalination. Fantastic. 100%. What do you do with that water? You need a distribution system for that. It's unthinkable. So again, you need to put together the people. And with the people, you need to put together the ideas and the solution. And it's not something easy. I mean, and the OCP is doing a fantastic job about that, because really it's doing a fantastic job. But we can all help to get better.
Yeah, I'll just add that we'd be happy to circle back with the work stream that you already have. Our focus especially has been on the power and cooling, and we don't see a whole lot of conversation going on in that space. I specifically work in that area, and this is completely brand new. We've been reaching out to other companies to see what best practices exist, so we don't invent the wheel. There's obviously overlap that's here between, like, for example, renewable energy. It's a very broad area, right? But obviously it impacts sustainability across the board. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question similar to what Famida raised. OCP also has a data center facilities project, and in fact, they have started talking about sustainability around data center power and cooling.
Okay.
So that
I'm in that group.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the two areas. One is on the life cycle. So one way to drive conversation is to bring ideas there and give them guidance on what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Right? Because oftentimes people are looking at each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than
doing this.
Yeah. It's like, who is going to be the first person to talk? And then once one or two people talk, then everybody starts talking.
Yes.
But
thank you for sharing that.
But and you work for the same company.
Yes. Indeed.
But
and this is the first time I'm meeting him, so you're right.
But we need someone like your company that helps driving, and it's not going to be enough. I mean, if Meta, say, jumps on board, it's not going to be enough. Again, we're going to need town, we're going to need a utility, but if we have a strong push by a company with the importance and the weight of yours, would be a fantastic start. And then we can bring in other large tech companies, because we started already. The first step is